Over the past few months, I've spent a whole lot of time watching Battlefield 1 gameplay and preparing myself for launch by revisiting Battlefield 4 every week or so. Suffice it to say, I'm a big fan of the Battlefield series and I've been very excited for this game. And even after too many hours this week with the game, I still can't believe what I'm actually playing. Battlefield 1 is a special game. Right off the bat, it's had me feeling things I haven't felt since video games were the most important thing in my life back in 8th grade. Every single detail has been considered, from these beautiful campaign moments all the way down to the layout of the main menu. You get a sense that they seriously cared about what they wanted to be in the final game, which was clearly not the case in DICE's last FPS, Star Wars Battlefront. Expanding on the single player, Battlefield 1 is the first entry in the long series of Battlefield games that has had a story mode depicting actual historical figures and events. There are 5 war stories and a heart-wrenching prologue that each have you doing something unique, whether it be breaking through the German line for king and country in a tank or halting the Ottomans' progress of machines alongside Lawrence of Arabia. Each story is short enough that they never drag, but they're able to offer the perfect amount of characterization both in the cinematics and, surprisingly enough, in the gameplay. The biggest problem with many AAA shooters recently is lack of grounding. You're gunning down an unknown number of faceless enemies, then you get rewarded with these incredible Michael Bay choreographed action cinematics. While this is fun a lot of the time, it's unrealistic, and there's a distinct line between the narrative and the gameplay. In Battlefield 1, characterization extends into gameplay as you coordinate with your co-pilot or call out to your fellow soldiers while you're actually playing, blurring that narrative gap. They still have to make the game fun, but even in the moments where you do some seemingly impossible stunts that would otherwise compromise the game's realism, it's immediately justified with a story beat that trumps these moments of heroism with the brutality of war. Moving into multiplayer, all is as it should be in a Battlefield title with 64-player Conquest and all the other classic game modes, with the exception of 2 entirely new game types, War Pigeons and Operations. War Pigeons is enjoyable, but nothing to write home about as the rounds go by fairly quickly in my experience. Perhaps the biggest change to the Battlefield formula, however, is Operations. Operations ties standard zone control objectives, but expands it across multiple rounds, mimicking an actual operation from the Great War itself. Before each of the 5 operations, a disembodied voice gives the historical context of the battle, then the round opens to voiceover narration by soldiers on your side detailing their feelings about the impending assault. At the end of the operation, that same disembodied voice will actually explain the historical outcome of that battle, and even speculate on what may have happened if the wrong side won. This is that attention to detail that I mentioned before that makes the game so different than any other shooters I've played in years. Getting into the multiplayer gameplay, the time to kill is significantly greater than most shooters, but this is by no means a bad thing. It actually gives you a chance to fire back and forth with an enemy player, and it gives you a short window to calculate your next shots instead of spraying and hoping you get a hit marker. Gadgets are something that often go under the radar in Battlefield titles, but use of class-specific tools and gadgets is crucial to ranking up with each class, which is how you get to unlock better weapons and progress in the game. I think this emphasizes the fact that no part of the game was ever overlooked, and everything is there to serve a specific purpose. The variety of weapons has been a point of contention in the game with the addition of experimental weaponry, but it's apparent that each weapon is there to provide players with a unique experience. It's very easy to assume that in a game with light support weapons and submachine guns, it would be counterintuitive to use something like a bolt-action rifle, but that's not the case at all. Every weapon has its own learning curve, and every weapon is different. DICE has considered that many of the SMGs and other auto-loading weapons of the time were in their infancies, and there are clear difficulties, at least for me, when using some of their earlier automatic weapons in the game. On the other hand, there are the bolt-action rifles, which at that point in time had been tried and tested for years, making it perfectly viable to use a single-shot rifle in other ways besides sniping. Vehicles are treated with the same care. A little history lesson, planes were not well optimized at the turn of the century, and that shows in the game. They're slow and very easy to manage, but that makes them very easy targets for a well-placed tank shell or even a sniper bullet. Tanks are nearly unstoppable forces, as they were in World War I, but their real-life lack of reliability is translated in-game with certain weak spots that can be easily exploited. Horses leave you vulnerable high above other soldiers on the ground, but the saber and the lever-action repeater you get with the cavalry class are extremely effective at their intended purposes. Chief among my personal complaints with the game is how it runs on Xbox One. It's in 720p, which is fine, but it's frustrating that even after compromising pixel count, I still get considerable frame rate drops even during pre-rendered cinematics, which doesn't really make much sense. Another strange feature is the lack of character and full weapon customization, and that ties into a greater content issue, which I'll get into. I understand the limitations of the time period itself and that there wasn't much in the ways of weapon attachments in World War I, but it would be nice if I could choose exactly what attachments were on my weapon instead of what combinations of attachments were on it. Being able to tailor my own experience like this would make the game feel a little more meaty, which as of right now is my biggest concern. There's plenty in the game, but I was always able to go back to Battlefield 4 because there was always something to unlock. That definitely will not be the case with this game. Maybe the game will still have high replayability simply because there's so many other overwhelming positives, but only time will tell. Despite these small setbacks, Battlefield 1 is the most fun I've had playing an FPS in years. The immersiveness alone makes me think that it could be a serious contender for Game of the Year, and as such, I give the game 9.5 shell-shocked survivors out of 10. This game is available today, October 21st, to everyone, so give it a try. I can guarantee you are going to love it.